Do the facts really matter? Well, before we get into rail, let's talk a little bit about our city. Among cities with a population under 1 million, Honolulu is rated as the most unaffordable city in the nation. With the highest gas prices, our electricity rates are triple the national average, highest cost of living, and you know, there's some huge problems facing the city and state government that we need to take into account. For example, the city and state employee retirement system has an $8 billion unfunded liability. Basically what that means is that it earns about 700 million, but it pays out over $1 billion. That means trouble for the city and the state. And to make matters worse, the city and state employee health fund has a $14 billion unfunded liability, and unlike the retirement system, it does not earn anything, doesn't have a corpus. And so this is a very, very serious problem that we're going to have to deal with. And I think that, you know, these are the kind of things that made me come out of retirement. The city's infrastructure is deteriorating. My truth squad here helped put together the estimates as to what it would take to upgrade the sewers and the water system. And for example, to upgrade the sewers, between 5 and 6 billion. To upgrade the water system, which experiences a water main break like almost every day of the year, about 350 a year, 5 to 6 billion as well. Our roads rated third worst in the nation, filled with potholes, about 1.6 billion to repave the roads. And then we have 800 million for storm drains. These are just some of the larger costs that the next mayor faces in dealing with. You may have thought that this was the Loch Ness Monster. Kind of looks like it, eh? Look at that. Well, you remember in 2006 there was this tremendous sewer problem in Waikiki, and you know, it put Waikiki on the map in terms of news around the world. And it's fitting, I think, that this thing kind of rose up out of the water, because it's basically saying, fix the sewers before you pay for that train. I don't mean to wax philosophical, but there's a saying, this was by the philosopher George Santayana: those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, and that's what's happening at the city. City has 1,400 miles of sewer pipelines. The average lifespan of these pipes is about 60 years. Our guys, our truth squad, calculated that the city needs to do 23.3 miles a year just to keep up and to upgrade the system. Well, here's what they've done, and this is from the city's own budget documents. In fiscal 08, they did 10 miles. 09, 5.5 miles. Fiscal year 2010, 3.4 miles, 3.8 miles, 6.7 miles, and 6 miles, all well below the 23.3 miles that they should be doing. As a result, there's a tremendous backlog. We calculated this only for the last 6 years because we couldn't get some information about the years before it. But the backlog is 104.4 miles, and if you use 10 million per mile, which is a standard unit that they use at the city, then the replacement cost of this 104 miles is 1.04 billion. That's the kind of cost that we face. Bad things can happen when you ignore your infrastructure. And it happened in Pearl City, and some of you may have read Star Advertiser a few days ago, or seen this over the news. In the Pearl City area, the sewer capacity there is at its maximum. And so the city had to declare a moratorium on building. This moratorium will be 6 years, cost about 60 million, they say. And what it means for the people out there is that no additions or new homes can be built during this time. For example, if you want to put an extra bath and toilet in your home because your children are going to live with you, you can't do it. And this could happen in your neighborhood. Neighborhoods like Moilili, Macaulay face the same problems. This chart now shows how the sewer fees have increased. In 2005, $34.32. By 2012, it experienced about a 175% increase, and from 2011 on to 2017, you will be facing another 36% increase. Here's the water rates. 2005, $23.24. By 2011, it's $42.11, and it will go up from then, eventually to 2016 to $67.72. We got this information from the city documents. Let's talk about rail and how it affects other programs. Now here's the road resurfacing. I mentioned earlier that Honolulu is rated as the third worst in the nation when it comes to roads. So you really should be increasing the spending. But what's happening, and we think it's because the city is concerned about its bond rating, which is pretty good right now, falling, which would mean millions of dollars more in cost. You can see that in the out years, especially from fiscal 2014, it goes from 77 to 55, and eventually gets down to 45. 77 million was not enough, but they're decreasing spending for the out years. Doesn't make sense. Never be able to repave the roads. How does that affect public health and safety? Here's a chart showing police funding. The blue is past and current appropriations. The red shows a pattern like the other chart. It's a pattern going downwards. From a high of 17.3 in this year, it goes down to 5.4 million in 2018. Same thing with fire CIP. It costs about $625,000 to buy a fire truck, and if there's a ladder engine, it costs about $1 million. So here you have again the same pattern. High of 16 million here, it goes down, and then you can see in the red that it basically is well under what it got before. Now, before we start on the proposed rail system, we have a little treat for you. We want everybody to be quiet because we're going to show you what it sounds like. So you can see when they say it's quiet, well, it's not exactly quiet, right? You might have a hard time sleeping. Now here's the proposed system. Elevated heavy rail system running 20 miles from Kapolei to downtown. Actually, it's not from Kapolei. It's about 4 or 5 miles away from Kapolei, starting in a vacant field. They say it's going to cost $5.27 billion, $250 million per mile. This is the most expensive rail project per capita in U.S. history, 5 times the cost of H3. The city claims that it'll carry, by 2030, 116,000 people per weekday. The trains will be driverless. They say it will remove 40,000 vehicle trips from the road. And they say it will reduce traffic congestion, and it'll create 10,000 new jobs each year, 17,000 at the peak of construction, and it will reduce dependency on oil. We will address all of those points. The cost has gone up from estimated $2.7 billion in 2006 to $4.6 billion in 2009, 5.3 in 2010, and 3 studies, one commissioned by Governor Lingle, state study, and 2 by the Federal Transit Administration itself, conclude that it'll cost $7 billion. We must remember that these rail projects average a 40% cost overrun. And that's not something we made up. The Federal Transit Administration, that's from their own study. City will tell you that the financial plan is strong, and in good order. Well, if it's in such great shape, why was it necessary to divert $244.7 million from the bus? Now, if that is used for rail, you're gonna have to make it up somehow. And for that kind of cost, it doesn't come out of the 0.5% rail surcharge. It'll probably come out of a general fund, which we'll point out to you later. Also, the city was required to establish a line of credit, $450 million worth. This also, if it has to be paid back, will be coming out of the general fund, which is property taxes, etc. Now, what would this rail look like? 20 miles of elevated concrete structure, 721 concrete pillars, each 8 feet wide on massive underground foundations, and 21 large stations. Let's take a look. Now here, it's gonna start somewhere around here. This is prime farmland near Kapolei. These renderings were provided to us, drawn to scale by the Honolulu chapter of the American Institute of Architects, those guys oppose this system. They're usually for rail, but not on this particular project. So here it is without rail, and here's what it looks like with rail. You gotta excuse the graffiti, they kinda took some liberties there. Now, this is Farrington Highway, Waipahu. Here it is, a fairly rural community without rail, and here's what it's gonna look like with rail. You recognize this is a downtown, the Chinatown over here. This is the waterfront. This is what it looks like now. Here's what it'll look like with rail. This building here is the historical Dillingham building. All of you know that, of course. And this is Nimitz Highway. Actually, it's Nimitz Highway becoming Alamona Boulevard. This is what it looks like without rail. Let's see what it looks like with rail. Downtown Honolulu, we have a view plane that probably will never be restored. And by the way, this rail structure runs down Halakewila Street, and it's going to run into what Dr. Abad, who is an archaeologist specializing in Hawaiian archaeology, said is burial central. Literally hundreds, if not thousands, of iwi there. Now, this is University Avenue without rail. Now, this is not part of the section that they're talking about right now, but if they ever extend it, which they promised to do, here's what it's going to look like. Now, this thing is 100 feet in the air because it has to, get over the freeway. The city is thinking about building these elevated structures. Cities on the mainland are tearing them down. Here's the Embarcadero in 1991 in San Francisco. The people decided they would tear that down. And here's what it looks like today. And Boston, where Mr. Grabowskis comes from, where he was the head guy there, they did the big dig, which put the transit stations and bus stations underground. We here, I'm not sure why we're doing this, but ours will be elevated. And you have to ask yourself this question. Why would you want to do this in a city that relies so strongly on tourism? You may remember, I think in the year 2008, we've tracked it down to that, the city was running all these radio commercials, and they kept on using the word reduce traffic congestion over and over and over. And then it might have been 2008, 2009, an advertiser poll showed that 73% of the people believed that rail would reduce traffic congestion. The one thing that happens when you sue people, and I'm one of the plaintiffs who sued the city, is you're able to get information that sometimes the public cannot get. And so, here's what the city actually said about reducing traffic congestion. City DTS Director Wayne Yoshioka, 2009, the final environmental impact statement, he's quoted as saying, traffic congestion will be worse in the future with rail than what it is today without rail. Here's what the Federal Transit Administration admits, and they say this in their Record of Decision, page 208, quote, many commentators reiterated their concern that the project will not relieve highway congestion in Honolulu. FTA agrees. So, two of the principals in building this thing agree that this won't reduce traffic congestion, and at one time, 73% of the public thought that it would. We all know of the fable about the white elephant, you know. A small village in India accepted a gift of a white elephant, and then the elephant ate so much that it nearly bankrupted the village. But the point is, of course, is that you should watch out what you build. Very little discussion in the media about the projected operation and maintenance costs. We took a look at it, and we think that this has some significant information that you should keep in mind. Because even though the construction cost may cost $7 billion or $9 billion or $11 billion, eventually it will be paid off. Probably have to raise taxes and all that. It'll be paid off. The operating and maintenance costs will go on forever for as long as the system is operating. So here you have, from the city documents, here you have the bus, $270 million, it's the O&M. Rail, $98 million. Handy van, $62 million. This is annually, for a total of $430 million operation and maintenance. Now, where does the money to pay for this come from? From the fare box of the bus, $76 million. The fare box of rail, they estimate $37 million. The handy van, $3 million. Federal subsidy, perhaps $29 million. The rest, $285 million, will come from real property tax, gas tax, vehicle weight tax, and every other tax that the city has. So once the hype on traffic congestion kind of was debunked, they turned to jobs to justify the project. The city claims that rail will produce 10,000 new jobs each year. Not for the whole project though. Each year, 17,000 during the peak construction. Well, let's take a good look at that. 574 million already exported jobs to Italy. That's where they're going to build the rail cars. Rail technology requires skilled workers who have experience in building rail, and it requires importing specialized workers. Here's what Kiewit officials admitted when they were asked. They admitted that many jobs will require mainland workers with special skills because, quote, we've never built a rail here before. And already the information coming out in the news media indicates this. The University of Hawaii Economics Department also did a study, and they predicted only 2,000 local jobs over the life of the project, not every year, over the life of the project. This is a chart we took from the Star Advertiser, and it's about the rail jobs created to date. Now, here you have 90 jobs, and you got 80 Hawaii residents who were hired. That's good. But look at the good jobs. 135 engineers, 82 not from Hawaii, 50 from Hawaii. So you have a total of 252 jobs, 142 from Hawaii, 103 not from Hawaii. Get down to the bottom here, the grand total, 508 jobs, 207 from the mainland, 294 from Hawaii, 7 are returning residents. These guys were so anxious to show you that we got people coming back home. They managed to find 7. We got the contract to do the first segment, and this is from memory now. They said publicly in the newspapers that they would hire, let's say 400 people, okay, to do the first segment. And the big issue that we have with the city claiming 10,000 jobs each year is that it doesn't make sense. Because, as a contractor told me, if you're going to use 400 workers to do the first segment, when the first segment is done, you use the same guys to do the second segment, the third segment, and so on. So where are the 10,000 jobs coming from? It's hype, and it's sad that they should resort to this. This is a very risky project. City is playing high-stakes gambling with your money. They're starting in an empty field first instead of from downtown. Rod Haraga is part of our Truth Squad. He had advised Mayor Hanneman to start from downtown and build out toward Kapolei, but Mr. Hanneman decided that it was easier to build from near Kapolei to downtown. That doesn't make sense to me, and Rod advised him accordingly, because what happens if you run out of money? In 3 years, you'll be at Oahu. In 3 years, you'll be in Oahu. If you run out of money, who's going to use it? If you started from downtown, as Rod Haraga and Professor Paros both agree on, then if you ran out of money, you can use the line, you know? You can pick up ridership. And then when you have enough money, then you can continue. This project was not driven by engineering. It's driven by politics. Then there's the lawsuit. I'm one of the plaintiffs, so we think that we will be successful. And of course, there's an election. And we think we're going to win. Perhaps the most important thing, though, is this third one. Neither the FTA nor Congress has yet agreed to award the city $1.5 billion for rail. At the debate that I had with Kurt Caldwell and Peter Carlisle made a big thing of President Obama, proposing $250 million for the rail project. He made it sound like it's a done deal. Those of us who have experience in government, we know that to propose something means nothing unless the legislative body, agrees. And there's no agreement. If the transportation bill that's before Congress right now, which seems to be going nowhere, is not passed, you can kiss that $250 million goodbye. That's how risky this thing is. And, when we criticize the city for starting prematurely before the funding is granted, this is one of the reasons. The city hired 10 public relations firms, spending over $5 million so far in taxpayers' money to promote rail. And it's such a one-sided promotion. They even ran a Star Advertiser editorial criticizing me in their newsletter. Now, I don't think they should do that. They didn't ask me to offer my rebuttal for their newsletter. It's so one-sided, it's biased, and it's wrong to use taxpayers' money in such a presentation. But we're not the only ones who feel that there has been a lot of hype on this. We looked at the administrative record, and we saw some of the emails that were sent from FTA staff to each other. And the importance of these emails is that these FTA staffers are basically writing to each other, never ever imagining that their quotes would appear here. So we found them. There are quite a few quotes, okay? But this is the one that I think tells you much about what the FTA staffers thought about the way the city was selling rail. I do not think the FTA should be associated with their lousy practices of public manipulation, and we should call them on it. We believe that that's exactly what has happened, that the information being sent out by Hart in the city has in fact tried to manipulate public opinion. What can I say? This is a cartoon by Pritchett, who, by the way, is one of our supporters. In 2005, then Mayor Hanneman went to the state legislature, and he said, you know, we can build a rail system from Kapolei now, not in a farm field, from Kapolei to the UH for $2.7 billion. Well, on May 3rd, 2012, Mr. Grobaskas, who is the head of Hart now, in a response to a question from Councilwoman Ann Kobayashi as to what it would cost to build the entire system, all 34 miles of it, said this: the total estimated cost for the locally preferred alternative 34 miles is $9.3 billion. They never told you about that, right? But this is their estimate. The studies show that these projects have about a 40% cost overrun. So add 40% to that, and you're looking at about $13 billion if they ever try to build it. As the public got more information, you know, the tide of public opinion began to turn, and two polls, Star advertised a poll, 53% opposed rail, which is remarkable because it went from 49% for rail to 53% against, and in the Civil Beat poll, it went from 49% to 55% opposing rail. Only 34% support rail, and eventually we'll get to every one of them. Here's a claim by the city. The city says if you take rail, you could get from Kapolei to Alamoana Shopping Center in 42 minutes if you live at the station. Here's what we think is the problem with rail: too many transfers. Okay? Is your home, you want to take the bus, get on the rail, and you got to take the bus again to get wherever you're going. This is faster. This is what I'm for. Bus rapid transit. So what's the alternative? You know, people have been asking me, Cayetano, what's your alternative? Well, we actually have been talking about it a lot, but let me lay it out for you. There's about $2.8 billion left of the rail, the 0.5% rail surcharge. If elected, what I intend to do is to go to the legislature and the governor and ask them to revise the law, because the law is specific to rail, to allow the city to use those funds to upgrade what's really important: the city's infrastructure, sewer and water systems, roads, Opala, and all of that. Thank you. Short-term alternatives, better, less expensive solutions include improve the nation's best bus system. By the way, this is what the buses are beginning to look like now. Doesn't it look like a train? Yeah? Point-to-point express buses, that's one way to do it for the short term, and other improvements that don't cost a lot of money. For example, I think it's in Minnesota, they're doing something called bus on shoulder. They allow the bus to run on the shoulder exclusively. Then you have road and sidewalk improvements that you can make, upgrade traffic light synchronization. Engineers in my troop squad tell me that the city's traffic light synchronization is about 15 to 20 years behind. Getting the software for this is not a big problem. You know, the cost, comparatively speaking, is not much. And you'll have to train maybe about 50 or so staff members, because right now they got about 6 guys here, and they just, you know, can't do the job with that kind of staff. And you train these guys to be, and gals, to be like air traffic controllers, but they're traffic controllers. Flexible telework, that's being encouraged right now, and it's growing in our country. And perhaps a flexible 4-day work week. These are inexpensive, they don't cost money, and put together, they can be very, very effective in alleviating traffic congestion. The long term, develop bus rapid transit. In 2003, the city had paid Parsons Brinckerhoff, the same consultant that's doing the rail project, more than $10 million to develop the 2003 environmental impact statement, which rated bus rapid transit superior to rail. People are surprised by this, but that's a fact. Here's what they said. The light rail transit alternative was dropped because subsequent analysis revealed that bus rapid transit using electric-powered vehicles could accomplish virtually all of the objectives of light rail at substantially less cost. So we pay these guys more than $10 million. Professor Pardo says it's more like $20 million. And they came out with this recommendation in 2003, and then in 2004, a new mayor was elected. He threw this out of the window, paid Parsons Brinckerhoff the same money, and they came out to justify steel-on-steel rail, elevated, which costs 5 times more than bus rapid transit. Here's some examples of bus rapid transit. You see the buses here. This one runs down the center lane, and they have a dedicated lane, so it allows them to travel faster than the traffic, which is all stuck here. This is an example of an electric-powered bus. These are coming out, now used more regularly. This is the future. Technology, as it develops for the car and bus, are far outstripping the development of technology for rail. The city is proposing a rail system that has a third rail. Someone told me, this guy was for rail, and he said, Ben, you can't accept the fact that rail is a paradigm shift. And I said to him, I agree with you, rail is a paradigm shift. 2 centuries ago, when they settled the West, Now, some places need rail. Yeah, we just thought we'd inject some humor in this, but this is quite a picture. Thank you very much for coming. Aloha.